Greetings, everyone. My name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, a site for legacy death and taxes. And today is actually kind of an exciting day. We have a guest on today. Um, Here with me is Skipper, who recently went and top-aided GP Niagara Falls with Legacy D&T. Skipper, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more fully? Tell us some things about your Magic background, how you got into the game, what formats you enjoy, all that sort of stuff.
Sure. Hello, my name's Michael Paul Skipper. I am honored to be here on Thraben University. Thank you so much, Phil, for having me. And I've been playing Magic since Core Set 2012, so 2011. I was working at a video game developer, and one of the programmers there bought a booster box, and he was like, "Hey, you guys want to learn how to play Magic?" And we kind of started playing on our lunch breaks, and very quickly, as soon as I learned about power and toughness and blocking and damage, I was in,
It
So
escalates really quickly. Like I
yeah,
remember when I first got into Magic, it was, hey, I have some decks from Boy Scout camp. We should play. And then all of a sudden, I had a literal carload full of cards a couple of weeks later when someone was offloading a collection, and it's crazy how deep down the rabbit hole you can go quickly.
yeah, absolutely. When I first learned the story I was just mentioning, I think I paid $25 for my packs, and he threw in a deck box, and I was like, $25? I don't know, that's awfully expensive. So, yeah, times have definitely changed. You gotta stay committed to it. So, but I love Legacy. Absolutely, it's incredibly intricate and rewarding. I feel the turn
Preaching to the
compression.
choir on that one.
Yeah, the turn compression. I love it very much. I haven't played too much vintage yet. Um, Although I did have an opportunity to play some vintage unrestricted one time at a weekend retreat with me and some friends and coworkers. We all had four Black Lotus and four Mox and all that kind of stuff
Just
in,
go
in our
go ham.
decks,
Do the most
our
degenerate thing
decks
you
that we
can
put
do.
together. So yeah, it was a ley line of anticipation format. So, um, but I also really enjoy playing Commander with my friends. After much arm twisting, I finally joined Arena about 2 months ago, and my girlfriend and I play that almost every single day. It's really fun, and otherwise, I wouldn't have much exposure to Standard. And now I'm about to dive headfirst into Modern because we're heading to Barcelona. So
I mean,
wasn't
luckily there's a
expecting it.
there's a humans deck there that probably plays a lot like D&T. So
Yeah, well, you figured me out, Phil.
All right, so that's probably a good transition point. Why don't we start getting into some of the nitty gritty?
Okay, sounds good.
So, like, you started playing D&T back in like 2014 when a buddy lent you a deck. You
Hmm.
got your own copy of the deck in 2016. You bought it
Yeah,
on Moto in 2018. You
right.
know, did awesome this weekend with it. So, what keeps you coming back to this deck?
Well, shout outs to Legacy Training Grounds and Zachary Koch. Legacy rewards familiarity and knowing matchups quite a bit. So, also, Wizards has kindly continued to print cards into Death and Taxes. Originally it was just affordable, right? There's no reserve list cards. So, it was accessible enough compared to Delver, which is also an awesome deck. I think Grixis Delver is fantastic. Um, and what was it? I don't know. I guess I really like Wasteland. I really like Wasteland and Rashad Port, and I had also heard that Death and Taxes was a difficult deck to play compared to some other decks, and that excited me too. So
Yeah, there's like I've been playing this deck for years and years and years now, obviously, and I still learn new interactions all the time, or I learn how to approach all these weird situations in a new way. And I just find that so appealing. It's a deck that I will never get tired of playing. Like The games aren't boring. Now, every once in a while, you just get destroyed by like, oh, I turn one comboed you. There was nothing you can do. Thalia was too slow. But other than that, I always feel like you've got a decent shot at making just about anything else work.
Agreed. If you're not dead on your second land drop, then there's probably a game to be played.
Yeah. All right. So, obviously everyone goes about preparing for these big events in a different way. Can you tell me a little bit about how you prepared for this? Did you test with the team? Were you testing on paper, on Magic Online? How did you go about testing for this big event?
The biggest thing that happened in front of this event specifically was putting together the Legacy Cube, as my friends dubbed it. I proxied up the format. I had a bunch of draft shaft in my house, and I bought 1,200 sleeves and dozens of deck boxes, and just printed out and sleeved the format, and you know had a lot of help from my girlfriend Mary on that, so thanks to her. And we just wanted to learn the decks from the inside out. As I mentioned in the article, which you brought up here, I spent a lot of time while I was learning Death and Taxes and losing in Legacy, just sort of being scared of what these other decks were doing, because Legacy is such a powerful format, and playing decks from the inside out, being able to cast Mox Diamond and Lion's Eye Diamond and all these really cool cards, besides being fun, also just gave me a better sense for what the speed of my opponent's decks could be. And yeah, I think that preparation helped quite a bit.
Yeah, this is one of the things the biggest proponent of personally is like, if you want to understand a matchup, you need to play both sides. Like, testing against a matchup is great. If you have 50 games in against a deck, you're going to know what you're doing. But if you were to have 40 matches in with your deck and then 10 matches from the other side instead, like, you would feel so much better. You'd find those little pressure points that you can attack as a D&T player, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I could say that I had a strict, regimented testing session like you just described there. But honestly, what happened is I got together with groups of friends multiple times and took a D20 and rolled it and just grabbed whatever deck came up. And, I was just happy to jam games and try to learn in a general way and just sort of get familiar and have fun. And I certainly think it would have been more valuable to be like, all right, let's test all the sideboard configurations and play 10 sideboarded games of this matchup and switch decks back and forth. And, that would certainly be a better method, I think. But I didn't have that luxury this time.
Yeah, but this is really fun. Like, I am equally guilty of doing this.
It is really fun.
Yeah, so like as a streamer, D&T is kind of one of my things. I've been messing around with Red Prison a lot, but I spend a lot of time just playing other random decks, and there's a lot to be gained from it. All right,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, there's a lot of knowledge, and it's just really enjoyable. It's really so much fun. And this experience was a nice way to spend time with my friends too, who are really familiar with Magic. And putting together a Legacy deck is hard. It takes a lot of time and resources. And so just getting to sit down and be like, all right, here it is. This is, it's proxied, but the gameplay was identical. So we just really had a good time.
Yeah. One of the things I talk about in some of my tournament reports is like the entire event isn't just about going and playing Magic. It's finding a hotel with your buddies, grabbing a couple of drinks, finding some great places to have food. The memories we made along the way are just as important. Like there's really something to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is.
All right, so I have your deck up on screen here. This is what you played at the GP, and the article you posted to Thraben University today. A is very well written and hilarious. B, talks about a lot of the tournament scenarios in the deck itself. But I kind of wanted to follow up on some of the stuff there. So let's start with some of the main deck slots. So D&T always has these main deck flex slots that you have to tailor specifically for any tournament you want to play. And how did you come to some of these choices? I asked a lot of people, hey, what would you like to ask Skipper? And they were all like, hey, what's going on with that Remorseful Cleric? Why
Right.
is his jailer in the prelate in the sideboard? That's kind of weird. So would you just talk a
Right.
little bit about, how did you come to some of these choices? What were you trying to beat? That sort of stuff.
Sure. Thanks very much for your compliments. I think mainly this deck was just for my play style. I went to Grand Prix Shizuoka late last year, and I had the constructed Fnatic package. I was by myself. It was a 4-day tournament, and I had a maybe board that was probably 60 cards deep that I brought with me. And so I was just doing event after event and changing stuff as I went along. And this deck list is what I left Shizuoka with, except the Chalice of the Void, which I recently bought that used to be a pithing needle.
Yeah, that's fair.
So uh, it was really just playing a bunch of games, and this is what I wanted to do game one, basically. And honestly, the short, I just want to beat my opponents, right? Like sometimes I just want to attack them, like, and have the ability to do so. And Sanctum Prelate and Palace Jailer, I have not really felt like I'm really going to be able to attack my opponents now with these cards. And so that's why I have the Walking Ballista, Brightling, Remorseful Cleric, Sarah Avenger, besides the other things that they do. And it's just sort of, it's different axes, right? Sometimes, the Karn and the Gideon and the sideboard are sort of the same way, where they're similar cards, but they operate on a bit of a different axis. So if you draw both of them against Grixis Control, for instance, they might spend a few turns dealing with one, and then the other one hits the board, and then it's too much. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's come back to Karn and Gideon in a minute. So I know one of the things that you mentioned in the article is that like you really liked having a couple of flyers in the deck so that you had more bodies that could just like physically go and trade with Delver of Secrets.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so like say that these were, the Palace Jailer and the Sanctum Prelate, then you only have the 4 Flicker Wisps that can go and trade with it, as well as, the Walking Ballista if you manage to catch that on 2. But if we kind of look at the way this deck is built, if you're going into a GP field where you're expecting to see a lot of Delver, you have 6 bodies that can trade with Delver, Ballista that can shoot it down, Brightling that can help to stabilize, and you can kind of see how some of these different pieces will all go together and like give you multiple different angles of attack.
Yeah, and I wish I could say that I predicted that would be the case, and that's why I built it this way. But honestly, this is just the deck that I wanted to play, and I got lucky to have favorable matchups in a favorable metagame.
Yeah, and no matter how well you play at these big events, you do have to catch a break.
Yeah.
Like, your event in particular did not start well. You came off of 2 buys and then you made an error against Storm, and the first round you actually played in the event, you lost.
Yeah, I was very quickly 3-2.
So I mean, let's follow that thread for a second. How did you keep that together? Coming off of the buys, you're feeling hot. What does it feel like to just like take that first round loss? Obviously you held it together and you pulled through.
Yeah, it was really quite something because we had that judge call was at least 10 minutes. My opponent, who is another local player and very skilled, cast Dark Ritual and then went Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal. and I totally missed the first Lotus Petal, and then we had a judge call regarding the second Lotus Petal, which was ultimately in my favor. But then they just emptied that turn, and I died to Gabos, which was sort of why I went for the turn two Stormforge Mystic in the second game, which was just completely ridiculous. I lost it, right? It was just a mistake. So,
Yeah. So that's it's kind of what I think of as the real life misclick.
yeah,
Obviously you're playing against a storm deck every time. It's just like turn two Thalia with almost no exceptions.
yeah,
And
either Thalia or Canonist, whatever you got, one of those. Actually, I'm curious. If you had both, what would you play first?
it's hard. Like each one of them hedges against different things. Um, Generally, I hedge towards playing Thalia first. However, if I am aware that my opponent is playing a bunch of Dread of Knights, the equation changes a little bit. Because, like,
Yeah,
the, 2 mana answer Thalia, Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual, ta-da! That sort of thing can get you. But generally speaking, Thalia puts the squeeze on harder, and against Canonist, they can stagger their mana use over 2 turns. So, for example, they can ponder on their turn, brainstorm on my turn, and you haven't
hmm
actually taxed them. You've just made it awkward for them. So,
hmm
Thalia tends to be the better first play.
Yeah, those are good points. Sometimes I'm afraid of a discard spell, and I'm like, well, I'm only playing one or sometimes two Canonists, so I might play that first. But um, yeah, I think you're right. I think Thalia is the way to go.
The other thing that Thalia plays around a little better is Massacre. So, like, if you play Canonist and then they go Massacre, it costs them literal nothing. And if you play Thalia, it costs them 1 mana.
Well, this is why I read Thraben University to get instruction like this.
Yeah. So, like, the thing is, I learn a lot of these things by, like, losing a game in that way. And then it's like,
Right.
all right, burn me once. All right, you got me. But I'm not going to make that mistake again. Unless I'm on stream, then, I do stupid stuff all the time. All right,
But
go ahead.
in terms of like what did I do? I had a lot of incredible verbal support and encouragement during my losses, which to me made a huge difference. And I've lost a lot of games with Death and Taxes before, and I've won some games too. And like I wrote in the article, it's just one at a time. There's usually very little amount of plays that you can make, and it's a matter of trying to plan them out turn after turn. And in the moment, it is what it is. So, you know, good pairings.
All right. Let's see. So I want to talk about the way your sideboard is built. So I just want to like highlight all the singletons that we see here. You have 9 singletons in your sideboard.
Uh-huh.
And so, for example, whereas I might play 2 chalices, you have 2 canonists. Where a lot of people play 2 Gideons, you have a Gideon and a Karn. You've got this mix of, oh, I've got a surgical to supplement the rest in piece. Do you just want to talk a little bit about like how you came to have so many singletons? Was this intentional or was it just kind of something that happened?
Sure. I think about a year and a half ago or so, I was really in love with having 7 pairs in a singleton in the sideboard. Um, Maybe I just liked it aesthetically. I don't know. There was definitely a time where I had double Relic Warder, double Canonist, double Surgical.
Yeah, the sideboards
And
definitely used to be more like that.
yeah, and through playing, I just have sort of, you know, decided, all right, well, I do want to have this card, but you know, I can't. There's only so many slots, really. I mean, there's other cards that are worth considering. Vryn Wingmare, for instance, is a card that fits right into the plan. Um, I there's Grafdigger's Cage. I bought a True Believer before I went to Shizuoka. Devout Lightcaster, Hallowed Spirit Keeper. There's all kinds of cards. There's more copies of Recruiter of the Guard. More copies of cards that are already in the deck. So um, I don't know. I think I just played a bunch of games and sort of decided this is what felt good. I really wish I could have another canonist a lot of the time, but not sure that I always need it. It's really just against Storm that I want it. And
Yeah,
the Chalice kind of does the same thing.
yeah. The chalice in the sideboard was kind of my thing. I started it at GP Richmond last year just because I thought it overlapped better in other matchups than Canonist did. But sometimes you pay the price of chalice being like super awkward.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't bring it in against Delver, and I'm not sure that I would. Um,
Yeah, I bring in chalice more for things like miracles, where it hits them pretty hard.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Uh, honestly, the only time I played the Chalice the entire tournament was that one judge call. So that was probably another lucky break in my favor.
Yeah, that's fair. All
Less
right.
mistakes to
So
make.
let's take a question from the chat here. You know, um, Lord Darkview says you seem to be pretty confident in your caverns in the articles. Did you predict a low like back to basics count or anything like that? Tell us a little bit about why you played cavern.
I think I only played against Back to Basics once in one game. So maybe I just got lucky. There were definitely some times where I feel like it resolved creatures that would not have otherwise resolved. And obviously that's why I'm playing it. So um, I don't know. I think again, it kind of just I've tried playing Death and Taxes without caverns, and then I wind up being a little more conservative. And this deck in particular, I feel like it's always correct to take the conservative line, because otherwise the house of cards falls apart. As soon
Mm-hmm.
as they start taking down one piece or another piece, then it's really game over. So maybe the caverns allow me to play as aggressively as I would like to play.
And that
Um,
really fits in with the way your flex slots have been managed, right? Like this is a more aggressive shell than many people are playing right now.
yeah, to be honest, I'm thinking out loud a little bit when I'm discussing this, and yeah, I mean, the second place deck, I believe had no caverns. I think was 24 lands and two jailers in the main, and I think a prelate in the main as well. So, yeah, very different. So,
Yeah, so just to follow that just a touch further, the way you build D&T might not be, let me rephrase that. The deck list that you find online might not be the right D&T deck list for you. Sometimes
I
the
agree.
way that you are going to play the deck will influence what flex slots are better for you. So, for example, like there have been times where, based on the metagame read, based on how I was feeling, I'm like, I just think it's right to play 4 Crusaders, a couple of Cavern of Souls, and just get them dead right now. And like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mother of Runes, Aether Vial, Stoneforge Mystic, Source of Plowshares, Thalia, and Flicker Wisp. Like, don't mess with that.
Yeah, this stuff that's over here, like, it's good. Like, they're pretty much always 4-ups for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, and I've tried 3 Flicker Wisps. I have the red build online. I've got, I played Orzhov Pontiff there was a little while where I think it was GP Seattle. I played 3 Cavern of Souls and 1 or 2 Orzhov Pontiff at that time because I thought that I needed it, but um, I think in getting more reps and experience with the way that I like to play, I just sort of realized, oh, okay, maybe I don't need this haymaker. Maybe I can just sort of, maybe mulligan or adjust my lines a little bit. So really takes a lot of repetition, I think.
Oh, agreed. Like, I've definitely played some cards wrong just because, like, I just kind of like misevaluated their roles and matchups, and then like you play more, you learn some, you get burned a few times, and then you go like, oh, I should actually probably hold this card for a little bit later. So yeah, I'm 100% with you there.
Um, maybe, is it all right if I talk about Remorseful Cleric?
Yeah, oh, go for it.
I fully accept that people are like, oh, this card's not good enough. Like, it doesn't feel good enough, really. And if it weren't for the results that I had in like, I played 2 events on Friday in Niagara, and I went 2-0 and then split the third round to get prizes, and then I played in a last chance trial and I went 3-0 and got a fourth round bye. And I think it was in the last chance trial that the Remorseful Cleric came up, where my opponent was on a Snapcaster deck, and it just happened to be the most useful card for me to get in that moment. And talking again about, when the pieces start to fall apart, it's really easy to lose. I feel like Snapcaster Mage is one of the cards that can really do that to Death and Taxes, and Cleric just puts the pinch on people.
I've lost so many games to Snapcaster Council's Judgment.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage is a fantastic Magic card. So having some way to interact with that, even if it's kind of a bad one, but it also trades with Insectile Aberration, and it wears equipment, and maybe you'll even exile their graveyard if they're trying to reanimate Grizzlebrand or Grave Titan or something. So
Yeah. The ceiling's really high on Remorseful Cleric, and I just want to point out I've played Selfless Spirit before, just as a 2/1 flyer. Like, no joke. The text on that card isn't super relevant, but like there have been times where I just wanted, something that I could like bring down to trade with Delvers and maybe have some upside elsewhere. Like, and the highest ceiling on Remorseful Cleric is like you instantly win the game, and like you just steal game ones that you don't deserve from decks like lands or dredge or reanimator, and
right.
sometimes even just like in a fair matchup, you're playing against Loam and you snag a Punishing Fire and a handful of lands and Shrink Knight, you know that can be enough of a tempo swing to just let the rest of your deck do its thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I like having 6 flyers. For whatever reason, that just feels like the right amount for me, where I start to feel comfortable if I'm playing Delver that, I'm gonna draw something in time.
All right, so we've already kind of been talking off and on about some of these cards, but were there any cards, main deck or sideboard, that really overperformed or underperformed this weekend, where it was just really noticeable?
Gideon definitely was really powerful, and I got to play him a little more than I had previously. I was really impressed. I didn't draw Karn all weekend, unfortunately, although I do like that card. I think it's good card draw. And the construct tokens can be pretty big sometimes. So, um, what else was good? I mean, Thalia and Rashadenport were good. You
Always,
know,
always,
the
always,
core
always.
the core of the deck uh, is great. Mother of Runes and Flicker Wisp, and um, yeah, discovering that new mode on Brightling that I mentioned in the article, where it's just whatever. I don't have anything else to do with my mana. I'm not going to wait a turn. I'm just going to cast it, and it resolves, and I untap with it. Well, that's a lot of information. So
All right, so maybe we should rephrase this question then. If you could fit one more card into the deck list, what would be the next thing to go in? What was your 61st card, so to speak?
in the main deck,
Yeah.
I guess Jailer. I really would like to, but then I don't like having the urge to move Vile from 3. To be honest with you, I you know, a lot of the times it'll stay on 2 for a while, but then once it goes up to 3,
It opens
it's
up the
like
end
if
game,
I get something off the top, like this is going to be really powerful. So there's a bit of a dissonance there, and I've lost plenty of games after I resolved Palace Jailer. Now, I will say this, one thing that I hadn't had enough chance to test would be just playing 2. If losing the monarchy is what loses the game, well, then just get it right back with another copy. So I definitely think I have more testing to do in that regard.
Yeah, every once in a while there's screenshots that circulate around like our Death and Taxes Discord or whatever, where it's like, this is the exact scenario for why I play 2 Palace Jailers. And it's like a Miracles player who has become the Monarch, but then there's nothing on the field, and it's just like Cavern on Recruiter, Cavern on Human, Violent Recruiter, cast the second Jailer, get it back, and then the Miracles player just like cries.
Yeah, and that's its own type of aggression too. So, um, yeah, it's really interesting. D&T is like this weird spot where you kind of have to like set up and slow things down, but once they're slow enough, it's important to end the game as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so there's this weird tension where you have to identify the moment where you stop denying the mana. And like, all right, now it's time to just commit stuff to the board. My mana denial package, it's kind of past its prime. Like, let's get them dead. Stoneforge, Jitte, pass. There's a lot of moments where you have to find that transition point, and having threats like these in your flex slots allow you to transition more easily to the killing. Whereas if you had, say, like Palace Jailer and Prelate in the main over, like, say, these two, you'd be wanting to like drag the game on a little more, play a little bit more controlling and patiently. So
Right.
again, kind of the flex slots adjust how you're going to play your matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage people, like you were just mentioning, to really try things out for themselves and um, just see what feels good to them. Because
Yeah,
I don't think by any means there's a correct way. Certainly, I wouldn't presume that my way is correct, but I it's comfortable for me, and so that's why I chose to do it.
yeah, and I also don't think that you can build the deck that wrong. Like, obviously, you can hedge towards things that are going to be better on any given weekend. But, at the end of the day, would your tournament have been vastly different if 2 of those main deck flex slots were different? No, probably not, right? Like, it definitely matters, but what makes the deck strong is the core.
Right.
So even though like we write articles and sweat over, the 6 cards that are in this column, plus or minus a land.
Yeah, it's incredible the amount of mental energy that I've put into this, and like it just doesn't even come up, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like even like the morning of the event, you're like looking around the room and you're like, man, that's a lot of Tarmogoyf. Maybe I should like slot another rest in peace into the sideboard. And then you're like, no, no, I already decided on this. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so like the first year or so I was playing competitively, I really sweated over the individual card choices. And then as time went on, I was just like, all right, this is conceptually what I think is good. I'm packing these cards. I'm not bringing extra with me. I'm not bringing my crazy box of like terrible white utility cards. Like, I'm going to the tournament with this deck list. Ugh. All right, so let's kind of talk about your GP experience for a minute here. Like, obviously, you had an incredible weekend, and this was big for you personally, right? This was your first Legacy day 2 of a
It's my
GP.
first anything day too.
Anything day 2, that's
Yeah.
even better. And you converted that into a top 8 finish. Given all of that, what was maybe your highlight of the weekend? What was the best part of the weekend for you?
Um, that's a good question. I don't really know. The whole thing was rewarding. uh, when it happened, I was just like, wow, I think, my deck list, when I thought I was going to get top 16, I was like, well, I think my deck list might be published, and then I made the top 8, and I was talking with Mary, and I was like, I wonder if Phil Gallagher is going to contact me. And we were sitting at the airport, and then you did, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I mean, like, this is such an honor, really. It's amazing. I On my phone, on my web browser, has all the sites that I visit often, and one of them is the D&T page on the source, and I refreshed that today, and there's my name, and I go to the MTG Goldfish Legacy results list, and there's my name. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Like, these things that I've been constantly going back to and paying attention to, all of a sudden I've appeared in them, and so it's humbling, and just thanks again
Of
for
course.
this opportunity.
It the first big break matters a lot. Chat. I'm kind of angling this towards you here, but I know many of you are aspiring competitive players. Maybe some of you don't get out as much as you want, but the first couple of times you go and you travel for an event, it's a really big deal, and you want to do well. And the first couple of times you travel, you're probably gonna get whooped because you think you're so good. You're the best player at your local game store, and then you get into the bigger pond, and all of a sudden, you finish your day at 4-3, and it's like, man, that was not what I wanted to do with this. And those near misses a lot of times hurt. So when you finally go and you get your first cash at a big event, you get your first pro point or something. It's a big turning point in sort of like your development as a player, and it's sort of like the validation you need. Like, all right, yes, I can go and do this. The time I'm putting into this isn't wasted. That sound about right to you?
Yeah, it's incredible and a bit surreal, but it definitely feels like one long process, which is why I wrote about it in that way. And yeah, for everybody who loves Death and Taxes and enjoys playing, just keep playing, And every Grand Prix that you're able to go to, there's not that many, go for it. It was sort of a strange coincidence. Last year, I wanted to go to Japan for over 10 years, and I never traveled. I bought my passport to go, but I bought it 9 months or so in advance. I got it in February, and my entire year led up to it. I was saving, I was paying off debt, I was doing all these things for myself personally, and I was able to go back to school, and I took a Japanese class, and yeah, it was all sort of one big track that I was able to put my life on, and I'm certainly lucky that I was able to, do that. I work pretty hard. I've got a couple jobs. I'm working like 50 hours a week, but I was able to sort of prioritize and make my way there. And definitely, I think for me, the experience of Shizuoka was a really valuable one. For one, I think the language barrier helped a lot. The Japanese players were really awesome. There was no sort of spiky, people trying to emotionally upset me in the middle of a game that I've experienced sometimes. And we just focused on magic. And when I came back, there was a Grand Prix in Oakland at the beginning of the year, and I saw everyone that I knew in Magic from the area. And a lot of my closer friends who hadn't seen me in some months were like, wow, dude, you're doing good with Death and Taxes. I'm like, oh, really? And it kind of meant a lot that these people who have known me for a few years and knew me when I picked up the deck were giving me some compliments. And I was surprised by it. So, um, uh, I'm stumbling here. I guess just keep at it. Just be willing to lose and be willing to learn and enjoy the process. I
Yeah,
think is
and I
what it's about.
I think that last sentence there is key. Like, you can't get focused on the result of an individual event. You
No.
can't go to a GP and say like, I'm going to top 16 this event. You know, that's not necessarily a realistic goal if that GP is going to have 2, 3, 4,000 people. Your realistic goal for the event might be like, I want to put in the play testing so that I feel prepared. I want to go. I want to play my best. I want to try it a day 2 and make as deep of a run as I can. And if I mess up, I want to learn from it. It's a process. Like side story. Some of the people who have been in chat for a while might know this, but for about the first year that I was like traveling for like SCG Opens and stuff, I did not cash an event. At every single event I played for a year, when payout was to top 64, I think my finishes were 65th, 66th, 68th, 69th, and like 72nd or something like that. And it was
Wow.
just like devastating, where like X number of events in a row, I just like missed on breakers or something like that. And it was a beating. So like I thought it was like D&T. So like I dropped D&T and I'm like, all right, screw it. I'm gonna play Miracles for event. I played Miracles for event, I cashed the event, and I was like, well, that was weird. I played like absolute crap this event. Like I know I made so many errors. I'm not making that many mistakes with D&T. So I went back to D&T and cashed the next event. And it was like, well, all right, we're picking up now. Like,
So what do you think it was? Were you more relaxed?
yeah, like I think like I was trying so hard to prove myself in that first year where it's like, I'm doing this prep, I'm doing this practice, I feel like I'm good, I got to start getting these finishes. And like, I just needed to get that first one, and then I relaxed and then I started talking to some better players. And it's like, this thing that I'm calling playtesting, it's like nothing compared to what other people are doing. And then I started thinking, well, how can I playtest better? I got the deck on Magic Online. I probably quadrupled the number of games I was playing, and my results started ticking up. Started getting consistent GP finishes, that sort of thing. Haven't cracked the top 8 barrier yet, like some people, but I'll get there eventually.
Hey, you work very hard, I think, and I think you deserve all the luck and breaks in the world.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm like really happy with my finishes though. Like I forget what, but I was like 30 something at Richmond. Like very happy with my record, especially since I got in the draw bracket and played against Grixis Control all day. So
Mm.
no complaints here.
Yeah, some points that came up while you were mentioning all that. I was looking back over my Planeswalker points, and in between Grand Prix Oakland and Grand Prix Niagara Falls, I went to a Channel Fireball 3K and completely scrubbed out. I went 0-2 and dropped. But as it was happening, I think round 1 was against Storm. It was a super close game, and I can't remember if it was a die roll thing but it was something very narrow. And my opponent and I were talking about it. It was like, yeah, that was fine. It was a good match, and it could have gone either way. And and then I'm in the loss bracket and played against Grixis Control, and they took me out. And it's like, it's fine. Like I went 0-2. That just happens. Magic's a game of variance, and in terms of expectations, expectations will get you every time. And so setting realistic expectations, I think, is a key. And a realistic expectation is not, I'm going to get such and such wins when I go to this tournament. A realistic expectation you can have for yourself is, I'm going to quickly identify my opponent's archetype. I'm going to make good sideboarding decisions based on that archetype. I'm going to mulligan very well, and I'm going to take lines of play because I have practice in this matchup and have an idea. And of course, no one's perfect. It's impossible to know everything, but you can prepare yourself to the best of your ability to at least improve. So
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the legacy players who are consistently putting up, good results, Bob, Honorog, Cyrus, these sorts of people, like they have the reps, they have the practice, they're trying to get better, they're trying to improve, they're engaged with the community, and it's a gradual process of improvement over time. And I've been to plenty of tournaments where I'm like, all right, it's about round 4. Honorog, how you doing? He's like, oh, I'm dead. It's like, what? And then like there's other events where it's like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna make top 8, but it's gonna be close. So like you can't always get there, no matter how good you
No,
are.
no, not at all. There's too much luck involved, but um, you can do your best.
All right. So how about a slightly off-topic question? Throw a curveball at you. So we just got a new set. We got that what is it? War of the Spark set.
Spar of
Um,
the war.
yeah, yeah. Whatever. The War on Lincoln Park, whatever it's called.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's about a lot of interesting and powerful cards in that set. Is there anything that you've got your eye on, either for D&T or that you think might make an impact on Legacy?
Oh, that Gideon Edict is the one that I got really excited about. But ultimately, I'm not sure. Am I going to play that over Path to Exile? Maybe, but I'm
Yeah,
not.
it's sort of like close, right? It's kind of like Blessed Alliance is maybe the best comparison,
Mhm.
where like that card's not always going to be playable, but I can see times where I might want it. I don't know how often we can really live the dream of like having it and Gideon at the same time, but it's
Right? Yeah,
it's an
but
awfully neat idea.
never if you don't put them both in your deck.
Right.
So that's the way you could at least give yourself a chance. But yeah, that card seems pretty interesting. I definitely think there's cards for Legacy, though. Obviously, Liliana's Triumph is really good. And there's also that red black modal card, the sorcery.
Yeah, I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but it's
I am too,
incredibly
but it's
flexible.
like target player sacrifices either an artifact, a creature, or a planeswalker.
Yeah. Um,
That card seems very good. So, yeah, it's an interesting set. I'm definitely looking forward to Horizons.
Angarth's Rampage, that's what it was.
Hmm. New Krenko. Yeah, so hopefully we'll see something interesting in Horizons, perhaps. Who knows? But
Yeah.
as time goes on, they'll print cards that are better than Remorseful Cleric.
So I
They'll print the rest in peace on a stick that you've asked for.
I tried out Tomic on stream the other day.
How did you like it?
Um, it was decisively average.
Mm.
Like it's kind of cool in that it's an aggressive flyer with a really good body that you can play on turn 2. But in the league that I played, its ability was like literally never relevant.
Yeah. And
Um,
did the casting cost ever cause you trouble?
Not really. Like I tried out 3 of them in the deck list, like which is obviously too many. But if you want to test a new card, put too many in the deck so you actually draw it. The casting cost wasn't a problem. I ran into a couple of times where I had like 2 copies of it, and the second one was dead, which is a major downside over something like Avenger, where like when you have multiple Avengers, you're just like greedily rubbing your hands together, getting ready to get someone dead.
Yeah.
But the card's also bugged on Moto right now, apparently. Um, Apparently, it makes like all lands hexproof from all directions, so you actually can't wasteland your opponent while it's in play or something like that.
Oh, well, that's totally unacceptable.
Yeah, so I expect that one will get quick fixed sometime in the next couple of days here. Uh, yeah. All right. So we've already kind of hit on some of your generic advice. You've told people keep playing, keep learning, keep up the process. Do you have any other like pieces of advice for either aspiring D&T players or like other just serious Magic players more generally?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess based on the questions that I've gotten about my deck list, it's just don't be afraid to do your own thing. Don't be afraid to iterate and rely on your instincts and how you feel you're best going to be able to leverage a win. Um, Magic is a game that really allows for a lot of creative freedom and a lot of personality types within it. So even though many Death and Taxes players might have similar personality types, every individual is different. So I think it's important to figure out what you like to do the best and what cards you enjoy playing and to continue to have fun.
Cheers to that. Yeah, I put out a lot of, content on this deck. Some people like Enevoldson have written great content. Bahra, occasionally streams with the deck as well. But don't take everything that we say as the be all end all. Like, do your own testing, figure out what works for you. And if you think I'm wrong, like, don't play my 75, play something else.
Now, that being said, I'm completely guilty of having looked at every deck list that gets published, and it's like, oh, I better go buy a non-foil copy of Elspeth Knight Errant because I don't want any foils in the deck. Like I have spent plenty of money on Death and Taxes cards that just wind up in commander decks because, I don't wind up playing them. Or I do, and then I realize, oh, Dread of Night.
Yeah, there's some shameful cards attached to my name. I think my favorite is for an SCG. Oh, what was it? I think it was an IQ. I think it's a 2/1 for 2 mana that gains 4 life when it enters the battlefield. I'm blanking on its name right now, but like I walked into the room.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I walked into the room and there was like 3 burn decks and a group of like 16 and like a Boggles player, and I was like, what the hell? Like, what can I play that can chump block something there and also gain me life for burn? Oh, this is perfect. Yes, thank you, Lord Darky. Lone Missionary. That's it.
Yes.
All right, so we're probably getting close to wrapping this up. We were planning on going until 8 o'clock. He's got somewhere to be after this. But I want to open the question up, sort of like the field up to chat here. I tried to hit a lot of the questions that came through, but chat, if you have any questions here, this is your time to throw them in the chat and we'll cover them. Kind of while I'm giving them some time to type. Is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to? Like, for example, I know you work for Puka Trade, and that might be something that a lot of people aren't really familiar with.
Yeah, shout outs to the Puka Trade crew and community. A lot of close friends, a lot of great games. That's how I acquired my paper copy of Death and Taxes, was through Puka Trade, just sending out stuff in the mail and getting stuff that I wanted back. So that again was a very methodical, purpose-driven process. Shout outs to George and Rob and Mary and yeah, just all my Magic friends, and hi to mom and dad and all that stuff. I feel so lame.
That's okay. We're all at least a little bit lame. Like, we're spending our time working on a children's card game, so like, so be it. I joke and
It's
call it a
okay,
children's card
cool.
game, but then we're talking about like advanced next level strategy for an hour. So, is it really?
I've found my best friends and love through Magic the Gathering, and the Gathering is definitely the best part. I've had an excuse to travel, and I'm going to continue to travel thanks to Magic. So that I'm okay with that.
Yeah. All right. So we have 2 things in the chat. Number 1, would you just like stand up? The people want to see your shirt. They think it's sweet.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is a Death and Taxes T-shirt here. It's a beer actually from Moonlight Brewery. It's a black beer. Looks like sludge. But I was working at a place where we had it on tap, and one of the bartenders had this shirt on, and I was like, oh, and he's like, oh yeah, you can get one. So I got one.
That's awesome.
And it only used to be on tap, and they recently canned it, and I bought a 4-pack of it, and I refused to drink the last one, and I left it in my fridge until right before we left for Niagara. So I am a bit superstitious.
Excellent. I think having a little D&T swag is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I'm talking to the man who owns a literal jitte, so you get it.
I do have that right here as well. Sorry, a little confused by the camera. Yeah, it's solid. Could definitely hurt somebody with this thing. Not that I'd ever want to do that, but I don't know. I thought it was cool, and I wanted one. I think it helped keep me focused.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, no, it's literally a Jete. It's no
Yeah,
pretender.
yeah. It's what the card came from, not the other way around.
All right. So one other question from the chat here. What do you think of the new Gideon?
Oh, he's really cool. I want to play him on Arena. Uh, gives another creature.
Here, let me let
The
me
thing
let
I
me
like
pull it
about
up.
Ally of Zendikar is that it creates tokens. That's what I like about both Karn and Gideon is that they create tokens. And for instance, Nahiri I thought was kind of interesting, and then I thought about it. I'm like, well, yeah, giving your creatures first strike is great, but you have to have another creature. And there's plenty of games, especially the ones where I want Gideon or Karn, where I don't have anything else. It's a war of attrition, and they've killed everything. So, um, I don't know. I'm not sure that it's good enough, but it's awesome, and I wouldn't fault anybody for trying it out.
Yeah, I think in other formats this card is going to be great, but if we treat it got anime. I'm not complaining. That's sweet. Um,
Yeah.
if you treat this as like this is a 4/4 indestructible human soldier creature that can awkwardly die if someone attacks it, like that doesn't sound all that good. And I don't actually think its abilities are good. Like the -6 is so expensive for what it does, compare it to Council's Judgment. And like
Right.
randomly giving your creature one of those keywords ability is neat and all, but I think this is way too far down the aggressive spectrum for like where we want to be.
I think so. Yeah. Um, it could. I could definitely see the games where it would win, where you could use that -6 and it would be good enough. But still doesn't kill True Name Nemesis. Can't vial it in. Um, I like Ally of Zendikar compared to this one.
Agreed. Like if I'm gonna play a planeswalker, I want it to be something that ruins control decks if it sticks around. And I just feel like that Gideon is just gonna get like, oh, Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshare,
Yeah,
heck, even
yeah. The fact
Dismembered.
that it always animates itself is a liability, I think.
Yeah, even just like a Terminus on your turn wipes out your Planeswalker. Like that feels so bad.
Yeah, it does. Card's awesome though. I like it a lot,
Yeah,
but I
I
don't think I'll play
I
it much.
expect that card is going to see a boatload of at least standard play.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, Michael Paul Skipper, thank you very much for joining me tonight. This was awesome. The article you wrote was great. Chad, if you haven't seen that yet, check it out. It's up on Thraben University. Tribal Gideon in Modern, sure. There is that one Gideon that says if you control a Gideon, you can't lose the game. So
Yeah, try it out. That could be really good. Who knows?
you can definitely, at the very least, annoy people at your local game store when they lose to that pile. There's bragging rights to be had.
Yeah, that other Gideon says he can't lose. Yeah, yeah. I think it's worth trying. But Phil, thank you so much. Again, I'm honored to be here. Thank you to everyone who is watching this in chat or whoever checks it out on YouTube and got all the way through this. I really appreciate your time, and that probably shows how much you love Death and Taxes. Like I know I do. I'm sure Phil loves as well, and just keep expressing your love for Magic through the deck, and it'll return that to you someday. That if my results are any proof of that.
Let's hope so. All right, chat. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night here. I'll be back on Wednesday. My Card Hoarder loan account is now good to go with the new cards. So if you are interested in doing a donation deck list for some of the new things, there's some spicy planeswalkers and such to try out. Let me know. Yeah, Swagahot MTG. The video will be up on YouTube in about an hour, or you can watch the Twitch replay in like 5 minutes here. So if you are enjoying Legacy content, follow me. I'm streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And so I'll be back Wednesday night with something. Cheers, folks, and have a good night.
Have a great night.